Hi, this is Inge coming to you from Denmark with my passion for knitting, and today we will talk about what I've been up to the past 2 weeks since the last video. And I've been busy, I tell you, because I took up the challenge from some of your viewers who asked if I could transform one of the sweaters from Robin, the kid knitwear, into an adult sweater. And I would, and I could, and I did, so here it is. So the tree trunk sweater now transformed into a size medium woman and a size small man. So if there are any male knitters out there watching, today we will talk about this sweater and how, with a few tips and tricks, we can turn these female sweaters into male sweaters and fit them to your body types. And we will walk through the different types and what to do. So let's do that. And yeah, I've now finalized the forest sweater collection for my grandson. I plan to do 6 or 8 sweaters. Here's the stack. There are now 6 here, so I think I need to do some adult sweaters now. He is well supplied with sweaters, and this is the last one, also inspired by a tree trunk structure, so the twisted forest sweater. So these were the 2 final objects for these past 2 weeks. And whips on my needles, I have quite a few because I like to take on challenges from family and friends, and they request different kinds of knits, and they have different likings and styles and textures, which gives me the opportunity to learn something new. So right now in my basket I have these different wools, and I'm quite drawn towards these non-dyed natural wools, non-superwash. So you will see them in the natural sheep colors here. So I'm going from all these blue colors I've been knitting with to these ones. And look at this one. This is a swatch for my niece. So she would like this one. Snuggly, snuggly, snowy for winter time. Because suddenly here in Denmark, I tell you, it has turned from warm and nice to stormy and cold. So just a week ago we had 24 degrees, I guess it's 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and then going to 14 degrees centigrade, which is, I guess, around 55 Fahrenheit. So it's cold. So now we put on our thick sweaters, so we are ready for winter time. And talking about winter time, the Christmas season is coming up. So are you ready for Christmas and Christmas sweaters? Do you want to make Christmas sweaters this year? I'm planning to make some for my grandsons. I have one grandson and a bonus grandson, and a famous Danish designer for Christmas knits, so I will share those. And yeah, as a new knitter, learning more and more, I get all excited and I want to share with you. So let's continue the talk about gauging and how come it can be a challenge to gain the gauging of the designer. A lot of variables are there with your knitting styles and so on. So let's focus on the mystery of the stitch and how come it turns out sometimes as a challenge. So if you are like me, not just interested in what to do, but also the why, then tag along for later on in this video. And yeah, when talking about the yarn and my passion now for this Viking Eco Highland wool, I contacted the supplier Viking to learn more about the wool, and I would love to share that later on in the video as well. So busy program as always, so let's get started. Let's start with the tree trunk sweater. requested by my husband and some of your viewers. And I guess in order for me to understand the challenges on the grading from a size 2-year-old to an adult size, I will start with the construction on the back side, because it's knitted top down, and I guess this kind of construction is called the European shoulder construction. So you cast on stitches here at the neck and do the increases, this time with this yarn on every row, until you gain the shoulder size that you want. Then you knit straight down and do the increases to get the chest size you need. Then you pick up stitches here on the shoulder part, and for me this was the most tricky one, because how many rows to knit before you start the increases for to define the neck area and so on. And I guess in the next version of this one I will try to make it a bit more like the one for Robin you can see on the picture, but I guess it has become maybe too wide here, so I have less here, but it has to fit also with the back, so I'm still thinking on how to do it, but I will. And then when I needed to figure out the size for my husband, he's a size small, I asked him to provide me with one of his favorite sweaters or sweatshirts, and he did. And I took the measurements and saw that actually from under the arms and down to the hips, they made decreases. So have a look at the poster of different body types of men and how come they did this with this sweater for my husband. So you will see his body shape to the right side. He's an inverted triangle, meaning that he has relatively wide shoulders and narrower hips. So this is why if I had continued straight down from the chest area to the hips, then he would have looked like a tent at the hips. So actually directly after here picking up stitches for the arms, I did decreases in the sweater so that it would be narrower on his hips. And yeah, judge for yourself on the pictures here of my husband wearing the sweater. You can see he's definitely not used to modeling, and he insisted on keeping on his slippers outside on the terrace. We had actually planned to go into the woods and play around, him and Robin, with all the sweaters, but it was too cold and stormy and rainy, so we had to settle with what we could accomplish here at the terrace. Yeah, so how far have I come with this one? Yes, I have written up the pattern in a text program, so it is done. So now I just need to grade it, or just to the other sizes, and I plan to make a pattern for men and a pattern for women. And actually it's only a few adjustments I have to do in the pattern. So let's have a look at the poster once again to see the other body types for male sizes, which are actually also the size different types for women. We can look at that poster afterwards. Yeah, let's have a look. So if you are what we call a rectangle or squared body type, yeah, then just continue from the chest size and down. Don't do the decreases like I did for my husband. If you're a triangle sized body, then it's important that you don't measure the shirt size after your biggest circumference on your stomach. Maybe there can be 1 or 2 sizes actually in difference from your shoulders and your chest area, or your stomach area, that is. So you start here, and the trick is just to make, instead of decreases, make increases from your chest area, and then you will have the sweater fitting your size. And the apple shaped body type, yeah, I made one sweater earlier on. You can see an episode number, I don't recall, I can write it here beside me, where I made such a sweater. And in this sweater, if you knit it from top down, I did increases here and decreases again at the hips, and I also included what I call tummy darts, which are short rows to provide an extra bit of fabric on your widest circumference here on your stomach. So it is possible, of course, and it is so nice that you can actually get it totally fitted to you and your liking. Yeah. Just the poster for the women types, you can see they are practically the same, but we can go into more detail with these female body types next time when I've made the next sweater. Yeah. Let's have a closer look at this yarn that I've come to enjoy so much, called the Eco Highland wool from Viking, a Norwegian brand, and this is the wool I use for the tree trunk sweater. I asked the company of the colors of the yarn, which of these are the undyed natural colors from the fleece, and they kindly provided me with the answers, because when you buy yarn on the internet, you cannot smell right, but I can tell you, when it's here in the hand, you are not in doubt which of these are the undyed ones, the natural wools. So next, the info on this yarn. I will just project what I have learned, and maybe in the upcoming episodes, when I know more about merino yarns and microns and so on, we can talk more about it. Also comparing the sweaters for my grandson, which I've tested different kinds of merino yarns. So what will wear and tear do to these non-superwash yarns, and pilling and so on. They also say that they have tried to make this wool so that you can use a larger needle size. So if you usually would, for this kind of wool, you would use size 3.5 or 4, you can use size 4.5 for this wool and still have a good result, which means that you can save 15% from a bullet gain compared to what you would usually do. And when I compare this knowledge from the company with my exact experience, I bought 14 bullet gains for my husband's sweater, and I only used 11. So it is a very light piece for a male sweater, and I think it fully lives up to the marketing of the yarn, I would say. Yeah. Let's talk more about merino wool in upcoming episodes. The second finished object is this twisted for a sweater. You can see the inspiration here in the picture beside me. And it is the same type of construction as a tree trunk sweater. So here the tricky part was how to fit in the cables so that it looks the same from the front and the back, and to fit under the sleeve. And sometimes when you add a different number of stitches here under the arm to fit the pattern, you just directly decrease at once here because you don't want such a big sleeve. So it's also possible. You can see I have decreased for every other row here, and then at a larger distance for the rest of the sleeves. They are fairly fitted sleeves. Yeah, and I made this in, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, the Drops Daisy is the first time for me. It's also a non-superwash merino yarn, and it'll be interesting to see how all these yarns I've tested will do while wear and tear and washing. So this is not worn much yet, so we cannot see if this will be pilling more than the other ones. Okay, that was the second FO. Let's move on to the widths. In the blue basket here, I have this sailor sweater for my grandson, and the reason why I haven't come further than to the arm here is that I've been considering what to do, how to do the top part, and going back and forth in my thoughts, but I think I have decided now that I will continue in the round and do the steeking and make kind of a fitted sleeve. So even though I'm steeking here, and I can make decreases to get the rounding of the sleeve. But let's talk about it when I have come a bit further. It's a lovely yarn to knit with. It's a size 3mm needle. Yeah, the other blue one is made with this Drops Alaska yarn, 100% wool, very airy and snuggly, and I'm doing this for the Dobble Tøfler, this pattern from Rama. I showed in another episode these Tøfler. So now these are for some of my girlfriends, and as you can see, what I'm doing different in the pattern is that when I cast on here, you can see it's closed because I make a double cast on and going around. It's a bit tricky the first rounds here, but then you just knit. It is okay. And yeah, I had a bit of trouble seeing this pattern in 3D when I read it. It's very, instructional. It's a one-pager, how to do, but to think, where are you on the slipper when you start? I couldn't see it. But let me show you here. So here's the slipper, and you start knitting from the bottom part. So you start here and go onwards here. So actually when you knit in the round, this will provide the inner and the outer foot of the slipper, and it looks like this when it's knitted and felted. So you can see here again, I fold it out, start knitting here, and then you divide for the inner and outer foot and do the decreases. So how do we adjust this pattern to differences in feet? One of my friends have a bit higher wrist, so I had to do some modification. And one thing to do it is to make this hole bigger, and you can do it by knitting a bit more stitches before you take up stitches here to close the gap, so to speak, for the wrist. And you can also cast on more stitches here to make it a bit wider here. I think I will do both, and I have also cast on more stitches in order to make it a bit higher, the shoe a bit higher. You can't compare here because this is felted and not felted, but just to show you. Yeah, I guess if you want to hear more about slippers and the felting process, we can talk about it when I have come that far. It's a very fast knit to do the slippers. So the tricky part is, yeah, now for me the tricky part is the felting, but actually it was also figuring out, as I said, the 3D of it. Okay, this was the blue width. No, I have yet another one. Just a second. This one. It's the, I've showed it to you before. It's the Champagne Cardigan by PetiteKnit. And now I have split for, to collect for the body part here. But what do you say in German? Es ist ein bisschen langweilig. It's a bit boring because it's back and forth, nothing happening. So I try to do a couple of rounds every day to come further, but I guess when I need to do the, I come to do these button bands, double button bands, it'll be maybe a bit more fun, but I'm totally sure that when I have finalized this, I will love to wear it because it's, yeah, a great piece. Just a bit boring for me, at least right now. Okay. Wow, it suddenly turned very dark here. It's actually pitch black outside, but let's continue. And let's continue the talk about gauging, which I started in the last episode. And this time we will talk about the influence on your knitting style and what you do with your needles, how you handle your needles. And I had so much inspiration from the blog post or the website called the Tech Knitter. It's a goldmine, I tell you, of tips and tricks. It's an American knitter from Wisconsin, and she has more than 35 years of experience. So a goldmine for new knitters like me. You can find practically everything there, including the why, which is so interesting to me. So let's look at some practical examples from the Tech Knitter and the posters while I try to show it on my needles what she's saying. Okay, the first poster here, she made 4 gauging samples, and even though she used the same number of stitches, the same number of rows, the same needles, the same yarn, she ended up with 4 totally different results. 1 wide, 1 tall, 1 tight, 1 loose. And how come? I guess, like anything else in life, the devil lies in the detail. So let's have a look at the mystery of the stitch. On the left hand side, you see a drawing of the stitch and what defines the stitch height and the stitch width. And what was new and curious to me was to learn that the stitch width is highly defined by the tail. And when combining 2 stitches or connecting 2 stitches, the Tech Knitter calls this the tweener strand. So you can see here on the right hand side, I have a picture seen from the purl side and the knit side, and I have painted these tweener strands red. So these connect the 2 stitches, and depending on how you hold your needles and draw your stitch back, the length of this tweener strand will change, hence influencing your gauge swatch or gauging of your knitwear. So let's look at her samples once again. And meanwhile, I will try to show you on my needles. So let's start with the wide stitch and work our way clockwise until we end with the loose one, which is her usual knitting style. So in order to provide or to make the wide sample, you pull tight over the needles. That is, you hold the needles tight together, and then you leave longer tweener strands between the stitches because you draw the new stitch back. So let's look at my sample. So what she says is that you pull tight, you hold the needles tight together. So you do like this, but then you draw the needle back and pull it off. So tight together, but pull it off. And this will result in these tweener strands to get longer, and hence you get the wide example. Let's look at the tall one. In the tall one, you have loose loops over the needle. I guess she calls it the needle barrel. And still having the tips close to each other. But then you get a shorter tweener strand because when you pull the needle tips away from each other, you do it like in the scissor-like motion with significant up and down motion. So let me show you here. So she has loose loops, not so tight, but loose loops here, and then significant apart where you kind of scissor your way through your knitwear. This will give you taller stitches. So let's move to the third one, where there is a short tweener strand and a short height of your knitting, because you knit with the tippy tops of both needles, and you have the drawing yarn running very tight and held the tension tight. So let us look at mine here. So the tips are close to each other, and I keep the yarn very tight, holding it tight here. So I knit like this, and it hardly slides off the needles. It's very tight. Then you will get this very small sample, both widthwise and tall-wise. And then there's the loose one, where you have both loose loops over the needle barrel, and you also have loose tweener strands. And this is while scissoring your way through. So if we look here, maybe it would be like this. So it's both loose over the needle barrel here, and it's also loose. So now I'm only showing you this in the continental style, and I'm very much aware that you have many styles. I have here a picture of two of the styles, being the continental stitch and the English knit stitch. And in the continental stitch, it's you have the running strand over your left pointing finger, and in the English style knit you have it over the right hand finger, and you kind of throw the yarn like this. So what does that do to the tweener strands? The continental knitter is typically close tipped like this, so you will get the shorter tweener strands in generally speaking, and with the English knit style you will get the longer tweener strands. So doing like this, of course you could, if you tuck it in here, I guess you would get it tighter as well. So let's go back to the slide here with the tips and tricks then, what to do. Because what do you do when you're off gauge compared to the pattern? You have the row gauge and the stitch gauge. So let's look first at the stitch gauge. When it is off gauge, you shift the needle size. So depending on your problem, looser or wider, tighten or loose, you shift a needle size up or down. What was new to me was that this stitch gauge, as we talked about the tweener strands, is highly affected by your knitting style. But typically you cannot change your style, right? This is how you learned it or was taught to knit. But you can also change the the needles and the pointiness of your needles. And that was new to me, because it is, if you have more pointy needles, you will knit tighter, whereas with a more blunt needle, rounded needle, it will be looser. So this was new to me. When you talk about the row gauge, it is highly influenced by the knitting material, so knitting needle material, so you can change that one. So let's just have a short look at the poster from last time, where we can see the high friction needles would be the bamboo, plastic, and so on, and the low friction, the nickel plated, or what do you call it, the steel needles. So, and then you have the needles in between. So the final poster here on gauge tips and tricks is when you then are off gauge row wise, because you have chosen the needle size you want. So don't change the size, just the material. And depending on your problem, you go the one of the two ways. So in the middle here, you have the pattern gauge. It calls for 30 rows to get the 10 centimeters or 4 inches. If you knit looser than the designer, for example, you need only 26 rows to get the gauge, then you can change to a high friction needle, because then there's a more grabby grip, so to speak, and you will knit tighter. If you, on the other hand, is a more tight knitter, you need 36 rows to get your 10 centimeters. Then you can change to low friction needles and hence get a more loose fabric. So yeah, let's look at this one for the last time and see the summary. If you are so controlled and knowledgeable about how you knit, you can look at your knitting style just like the tech knitter did in order to change her 4 samples here. Yeah, I guess this was enough about gauging, but very, very useful for me, and as you see later, for my the knit for my niece. The last whip on my needles I would like to share today is the sweater for my niece. She sent me this picture you can see beside me and asked, "Auntie, can you make this one?" Yeah, it looks like fun and new learnings for me, because I'm not used to knitting with these bulky yarns. So we bought this one, Drops Wish, which is a blown yarn, and it is made by 50% alpaca, 33% cotton, and 17% wool. And I guess the core of the yarn is the cotton part, and then they blow in the alpaca and the merino. But as I said, I'm not an expert in blown yarn, but it's very squishy and nice. So I searched for the pattern, but without luck. So I thought, well, I'd ask one of my favorite designers called Lera Studio on Instagram. So I wrote to Natalie Smirnova and asked her if this was one of her designs, and she kindly provided me with this poster you see here. Not a sweater, but a cardigan, however, with the stitches and the general idea behind the design. So I got started and made this swatch with these berries. Some call them strawberries, others call them raspberries. Let's just call them berries. And so two tricky things, or the ridges are the tricky part, and this one is whether or not to use seven garter ridges here or just 5, because she's a size small, so in order for her not to disappear in the sweater, should I do them smaller? But I tend to gravitate towards these ones. I haven't quite decided yet. Maybe I should continue with a few rows more here to see if these will be nice. Okay, but then I started, I will make it a two-piece garment and then knit together the shoulders and pick up stitches for the sleeves. So I knitted up this one and ripped it back again because I was not happy with the tension of these ridges. Seen from afar, maybe it looks quite even now, I hope so, but when you look closely, maybe you can see it. So I thought, well, now I will use the learnings I had on this gauging. So as I said before, I'm a continental knitter, so I knit with the needles close to each other and I flip the left to get the yarn on the right needle. So this time, having very much observance, or what I observe very much, that I keep the yarn here with the same tension, and I try not to flicker this one, so I just do pick up here and tension by just taking off the stitch like this. Oh, I'm over exaggerating, but I'm trying not to make too much movement in order for this tweener yarn of the garter stitches to be even. And this is definitely better than my first attempt, so I will settle with this one, and one of the few, hopefully few ones like this one, I can hopefully make small adjustments on the back side. I don't think it will even out when washing. I've made a sweater with these garter stitches before, and yeah, it is hard to make even, at least for me. And I guess a white yarn is very revealing. You see every unevenness in a white yarn. That's how it is. Yeah, so nice winter snuggly sweater for my niece coming up soon, and I expect to be finalized before a big family event for all our family members, siblings and their families. So I hope she will be happy receiving the sweater at that event. So being ready for Christmas, I've started looking at patterns, and one of my famous Christmas designers in Denmark is Hanne Larsen. And last year I made 2 of those for my grandson and bonus grandson with these elves on the yoke sweater top down. And I made it in drops flora. It's a combination of alpaca and wool, and a very fine gauge. I don't recall, it could be 24, 28, I don't recall. And yeah, actually Robin has worn it outside of the Christmas season because yeah, he liked the sweater, and the elves, they have turned a bit pink in their faces. They were white at start, but I think the color bleeds, so maybe I soaked it with other red sweaters and a bit too long, forgot it. But anyhow, of course, he can use it. So I looked at her website to see if she had come up with yet another Christmas design, and yes, she has. Look at this one with nice ice crystals or snowflakes. Isn't it gorgeous? And I think I will make it up in, yeah, I'll find some yarn in some, yeah, icy colors for the 2 boys. I also considered the hats also for this one, but I guess when we are inside and around the Christmas tree, they wear these hats only 3 seconds and then it gets too hot. Of course they could wear it outside, but yeah, no, I think I will focus on the sweater. I also saw a design, I don't know the designer, with this Rudolph reindeer with the red nose. Isn't it nice? I also thought I could make this one. I just haven't figured out the colors yet. And look at this one for adults. Isn't it fun? It looks like a Christmas heart, and it is made by Natalie Smirnova, I talked about before, Lera Studio. She is so ingenuitive and makes up things you haven't even thought about. So she keeps getting all these ideas. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so these were my first ideas and what I've seen. So do you have any ideas for Christmas knits? Please share, because there are so many nice and fun out there, I'm sure. I have just been focused on the ones I've seen here lately. Yeah, so let's get ready for Christmas with our sweaters. We reached the end of the episode now, and so lucky for me, my husband is calling. He's calling, dinner's ready. I am so spoiled. So now I will go enjoy the dinner, and meanwhile, enjoy your knitting, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. See you next time. Roger and over from Inge's Knitting Lab. Color me happy. Bye bye.